Hollywood has a brutal way of chewing up its young stars. It crafts an illusion of perfection, then relentlessly punishes you the instant you fail to uphold it. For Taylor Lautner, his journey began as a child actor, but everything irrevocably shifted at 16 when he landed the game-changing role of Jacob Black in Twilight. In just 2 short years, he rocketed into superstardom, becoming one of the most recognizable teenagers on Earth. Millions of screaming fans chanted his name, his chiseled face graced every magazine, and his impossibly toned physique plastered movie posters worldwide. He was the very embodiment of overnight success. Then, almost as quickly, he simply vanished. There was no dramatic meltdown, no public scandal that dominated headlines. He just disappeared. The story of Taylor Lautner isn't a sensational Hollywood controversy. It's something far more subtle, and perhaps profoundly sadder. It's a stark illustration of an industry that meticulously builds you up, aggressively markets you to the world, only to ruthlessly discard you the moment you cease being profitable. He was meticulously cast for his striking looks, meticulously molded into a global teenage heartthrob, and catapulted to a dizzying level of fame most actors only dream of. Yet, as the Twilight phenomenon began to wane, and the iconic abs that had propelled him to fame started to soften, Hollywood's relentless gaze simply shifted. The profound toll this took on his mental health, his fragile confidence, and his very sense of self wasn't a fleeting moment. It became a burden he carried for years. So, how exactly did a star burn so brightly, only to fade so quickly? And why did Taylor retreat into the shadows, while his Twilight co-stars seemed to ascend to even greater heights? Taylor Daniel Lautner, born in Grand Rapids, Michigan in 1992, hailed from a perfectly ordinary middle-class family. His father was a pilot, his mother worked for a software company. Absolutely zero connections to the glamorous world of Hollywood, but young Taylor possessed a secret weapon, something truly extraordinary that set him apart. He was legitimately, phenomenally gifted at martial arts. Then, in 2007, a simple audition presented itself for a role that would utterly redefine his life forever: Jacob Black in Twilight. On paper, it seemed unremarkable. Twilight was a relatively low-budget vampire film adapted from a series of niche novels. Jacob, the loyal best friend, barely made an appearance in the first book. It looks like a throwaway role in a movie destined for obscurity, but appearances, as we know, can be deceiving. Twilight didn't just succeed, it exploded at the box office in November 2008. Raking in an astounding $70 million on its opening weekend against a modest $37 million budget. It became an instant, global phenomenon. It went on to gross over $400 million worldwide, practically overnight. Robert Pattinson, Kristen Stewart, and Taylor, despite his initially smaller part, were suddenly thrust into a level of unprecedented fame, a dizzying ascent few actors ever truly experience. They simply couldn't go anywhere without being swarmed by throngs of screaming, devoted fans. For Taylor, this meteoric rise was utterly surreal. He transformed from a kid doing minor TV spots to a central figure in the most talked-about movie franchise on the planet. Yet, just as quickly as his fame ignited, it nearly flickered out. The threat arrived with a single, devastating phone call from the production team. Taylor recalled them saying, "Thank you for your participation, but we are recasting you for the rest of the franchise." The rationale was simple. In the first book, Jacob was a little scrawny boy at 16, but in New Moon, he undergoes a dramatic transformation into a 25-year-old looking like built, muscular man. The producer's original plan was to cast a 16-year-old, which Taylor was at the time, then bring in a more physically mature actor for the subsequent films. But Taylor Lautner wasn't about to relinquish the role that had changed his life. He had devoured the books, understanding Jacob's impending physical evolution. The moment filming wrapped on the first movie, he launched himself into an intense, relentless training regimen. By the time that dreaded phone call came, he had already packed on a significant amount of muscle. "I was ready," he stated. His team, armed with this impressive transformation, immediately countered. "Have you seen him recently?" they asked the stunned production team. Taylor had been hardcore, working out for about 9 months at this point, adding about 20 or 25 pounds of muscle. Production was undeniably surprised, but they still made him fight for it. He had to re-audition and prove his commitment. But in the end, his sheer dedication paid off. He kept the role. All his hard work had secured his future in the franchise, but what no one, least of all Taylor, realized at the time was the profound psychological price he would pay for this relentless physical transformation. His training regimen wasn't just dedicated, it was obsessive. He committed to multiple grueling gym sessions per day, 6 days a week, rigidly adhering to a strict, restrictive diet. As Taylor himself put it at the time, "I'm hoping it's paying off because it took a lot of hard work, so I'm trying to get him up there." He transformed from a lean 140 pounds in the first Twilight film to a chiseled 175 pounds for New Moon, a truly dramatic physical difference. "That wasn't my natural body," he later reflected. "I had to work very hard for it, and very, very hard just to maintain it." Taylor's entire existence began to revolve around the relentless upkeep of his physique. But when New Moon finally hit theaters, he received his colossal payoff. His role was massively expanded, transforming Jacob Black from a background character into 1/3 of a full-blown, passionate love triangle. Suddenly, Taylor wasn't just part of the cast, he became the main event. The Team Edward versus Team Jacob phenomenon completely engulfed pop culture, and teenage girls across the globe became utterly obsessed with his new, impossibly chiseled body. Taylor ascended to become one of the most talked-about teen stars in the world, with his physique positioned front and center in the franchise's marketing and relentless media coverage. For a dazzling period, he was truly on top of the world. But this relentless, objectifying focus on his body, from screaming fans, invasive media, and relentless interviewers, would inevitably extract a heavy cost. Taylor was a mere 17 during some of these interviews, yet his age seemed to be utterly irrelevant. This dehumanizing treatment simply became the accepted norm. As the Twilight franchise continued its reign, his fame and the public's relentless obsession with him only intensified. Hollywood, ever opportunistic, saw the perfect storm. Massive popularity, a perfectly ripped physique, and undeniable heartthrob status. They decided it was time to cash in big. In 2011, Taylor was given what was intended to be his grand shot at leading man status with Abduction, a high-budget action thriller meticulously designed to catapult him into the next, more mature phase of his career. Lionsgate positioned Abduction as his grand shot at leading man status, a high-budget action thriller meticulously designed to prove he was far more than just the guy from Twilight. He commanded an astonishing $7.5 million, but Hollywood's bet on Lautner failed spectacularly. Simultaneously, the relentless public pressure never eased. For a 19-year-old still desperately trying to forge his own identity, the constant, suffocating attention became unbearable. Abduction was meant to be his pivotal turning point. Instead, it became the undeniable beginning of a slow, agonizing fade from the blinding spotlight. After the final Twilight film wrapped in 2012, Taylor, now 20, was utterly exhausted. For the first time in years, he wasn't bound by a movie contract demanding the ruthless maintenance of a ripped physique. And so, he consciously stepped back from the relentless gym sessions, the restrictive diets, and the constant, draining upkeep. When the franchise ended and I started noticing it for the first time, when I just started rebelling against a gym, he recalled, I was forced to be in a gym multiple times a day, 6 days a week, for those years. And I think the first time I started noticing it was being like, I don't ever want to see a gym again. And you know what happens when you don't want to see a gym is you start losing the 8-pack. In the ensuing years, Taylor continued acting, appearing in a few films like Tracers and Grown Ups 2. However, nothing truly stuck, and his attempts to pivot into more dramatic roles, like in the indie film Run the Tide, went largely unnoticed. Instead, the public's focus remained on his changing physique, with merciless comparisons to his peak Twilight body and cruel comments about him having let himself go. The truly heartbreaking part? Taylor still looked better than most men his age. But when your fame is inextricably linked to possessing a perfect body, and that idealized version of you is forever immortalized across the internet, anything less than that impossibly high standard instantly becomes a public disappointment. The expectations he was being held to were, quite simply, unrealistic. The uncomfortable truth was that Taylor Lautner was never the cocky, hyper-confident sex symbol the media had manufactured him to be. In reality, he was goofy, endearingly self-deprecating, and painfully aware of the profound mismatch between his authentic self and the larger-than-life image Hollywood had meticulously constructed around him. And when he dared to push back against that manufactured image, he was swiftly punished. The body shaming continued relentlessly. An interview in 2016 led to vicious online comments and constant, cruel side-by-side comparisons, branding him as fat simply for having gained a few pounds. Privately, Taylor grappled with immense internal struggles, as the public judgment about his appearance took an excruciatingly serious toll on his mental well-being. But it wasn't solely about his physique. His career, too, was in increasingly dire straits. While Kristen Stewart was landing critically acclaimed roles in independent dramas and earning widespread praise for her raw performances, and Robert Pattinson was entirely reinventing himself, shedding his Twilight image to be embraced as a serious, versatile actor, Taylor was utterly stuck. He had plummeted from being one of Hollywood's most talked-about young stars to feeling like he didn't belong in the industry at all. Eventually, the crushing feelings of inadequacy became simply unbearable. Lautner largely vanished from the public eye from 2017 to 2021, ceasing major public appearances and interviews. Yet, during this deliberate time away, profound changes began to unfold. The relentless glare of fame slowly faded, and he gradually stopped being instantly recognized. Even more impactful, during his time away, he met Taylor Dome, a compassionate nurse who would become his wife. Away from the relentless cameras, he began rebuilding his life on his own terms. In 2022, Taylor Lautner quietly re-emerged, fundamentally shifted. He seemed more grounded, at ease, and at peace. Reflecting on his isolation, Taylor stated, "It was needed for me personally. So Taylor feels so much better today than I have in the last 4 or 5 years. With newfound clarity, Lautner tentatively returned to acting in Home Team, a Netflix comedy. He played a high school football coach, visibly having fun again. It wasn't a thunderous comeback, but something more significant. He was enjoying himself and began making cautious public appearances, reigniting fan excitement. However, the harsh realities of his past soon resurfaced. In May 2023, Taylor and his wife appeared on The Today Show for their new mental health podcast. When Taylor later read the Instagram comments promoting the segment, he instantly regretted it. He revealed, "I was going through the comments and it brought up old feelings and memories, why I don't look through comments." As the video showed a montage of vicious online body shaming, Taylor later shared his profound gratitude for his current state of mind. If this was 10 years ago, 5 years ago, maybe even 2 to 3 years ago, that really would have got under my skin, and it would have caused me to want to just go in a hole. I'm just so thankful that I am in the place I am today where I can see that. And I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to say it doesn't bug me. I wouldn't be here posting this video if it didn't bother me at all. But it doesn't make me question who I am. And it doesn't take anything away from me. Just be nice. It's not that difficult." While his candid video drew overwhelming support, the persistent negative comments highlighted a stark reality. People were still fixated on his appearance. It seemed to matter little how far he'd come, or the healthy perspective he'd gained. But this time, Taylor hasn't retreated. Instead, he has powerfully chosen to speak up, using his platform and podcast to boldly call out body shaming and offer the empathy he once needed. Taylor Lautner simply outgrew the narrow, manufactured version of himself Hollywood tried to sell, finally embracing his authentic self. And that, in itself, is a profound and lasting success.